Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just dive right into it, shall we? We're about to plunge into the dark, high-pressure, and let's be honest, often incredibly chaotic ocean of Web3. Today, we're looking at a foundational problem, why the current structures we use to build DAOs are fundamentally built to fail. I know, it's a bold statement, but the evidence from our source material is striking. We're going to unpack the existential risks that are currently threatening billion-dollar decentralized networks. Think about it. We have communities moving massive amounts of capital at the speed of the internet, yet they are structurally handcuffed. We'll explore why we urgently need a massive paradigm shift in how we protect them if they're going to survive the future.
Our source material kicks off with this really powerful realization. Web3 is alive. It's teeming with innovation, basically acting as this massive, borderless experiment in how human beings coordinate and govern themselves without centralized intermediaries. But here is the real tragedy highlighted by the research. Despite all this vibrant energy, we are wasting so much of its potential right now by trapping it in obsolete designs. We're taking something incredibly dynamic and trying to force it into static, industrial-era boxes. We have communities moving billions in capital instantly, yet they're held back by 20th century paperwork. That friction is exactly where the potential is lost and where innovation stalls.
Notice how perfectly a bioluminescent jellyfish represents a DAO. The research actually refers to DAOs as new legal animals. Just think about the fluidity of it. It's a rapidly evolving entity. A DAO forms transnational peer-to-peer relationships at incredible speeds that completely outpace traditional legal frameworks. They have dynamic membership, distributed decision-making, and incredibly fluid boundaries. They aren't just static software artifacts living on a server somewhere. They are open, socio-technical systems embedded in much larger, highly complex ecosystems. If you treat a living organism like a machine, you're eventually going to break it.
Section 1. 2 Brittle Governance Traps.
So, instead of treating these organizations as living organisms, we try to contain them using rigid machinery, and that leads us directly into this core problem. On one side of the spectrum, we have the code is law reduction. It's a really brittle approach because it treats DAOs as pure tech, assuming governance can be entirely deterministic. But pure code breaks down the second a real-world crisis hits. It completely ignores social legitimacy and human ambiguity. If there's a hack or a highly nuanced dispute, a smart contract simply cannot mediate intent. Now, on the exact opposite side, we have traditional legal wrappers. This is like slapping a standard LLC onto a fluid DAO. It acts as a suffocating corporate straitjacket. Traditional corporations assume a fixed, static jurisdictional anchoring and centralized hierarchies. They are fundamentally misaligned with the cross-jurisdictional fluidity of a true DAO. So, you end up with a massive gap between formal legal representation and actual day-to-day governance practices.
Section 2. Navigating existential risks.
Okay, this next part is absolutely crucial. When a protocol realizes a traditional wrapper is a terrible fit, they often choose to operate completely unwrapped to avoid that straitjacket. But existing purely as free-floating code in a zone of ontological ambiguity creates massive vulnerabilities. The first of these is the liability trap. If you lack a formalized legal wrapper, state courts don't just throw their hands up and ignore you. No, they default to treating your decentralized network as a general partnership. This classification completely strips away any corporate shield. It exposes every single community participant, every token holder, and every multi-sig signer to crushing unlimited personal liability for the debts and actions of the entire ecosystem. Literally one hack or one regulatory misstep, and everyone's personal assets, their houses, their life savings, are suddenly on the line.
The second existential threat is asset paralysis. Pure smart contracts might possess absolutely brilliant computational logic, right? But they completely lack institutional legal personhood in the eyes of traditional state courts. So what does this mean practically? Well, it means your free-floating protocol literally cannot legally hold or own off-chain assets. It cannot own core intellectual property rights. It can't secure real estate. It cannot even access traditional corporate banking rails or open a basic secure fiat custody account. It is totally financially paralyzed in the physical world. Just imagine trying to hire a real-world developer or pay for AWS servers to host your front end. Without a bank account or legal standing, the DAO simply cannot do it.
And to compound that danger, we also see what the research calls contractual impotence. A software protocol existing solely on a public ledger cannot manifest legal capacity. It can't sign binding corporate instruments, and it utterly lacks the legal standing required to execute enforceable agreements. If you can't even sign a basic service level agreement to protect your operational systems, how can you function? Furthermore, if another party breaches a contract, an unwrapped DAO has absolutely zero ability to take them to court. You have no legal recourse. The network is profoundly exposed, left entirely depending on goodwill in a space that we all know is famously adversarial.
Let's pause for a second and ask ourselves this foundational question. We've seen that pure code is far too exposed to catastrophic liability and asset paralysis. Yet, on the other hand, legacy corporate wrappers are way too rigid for borderless innovation. So, how do we protect a decentralized, living ecosystem without suffocating the very fluidity that makes it valuable in the first place? How do we bridge that massive gap between the on-chain reality and the off-chain legal systems that still govern the physical world?
Section 3. DAOs as legal animals.
Moving right into our solution phase, how do we actually protect them? The research proposes we stop viewing DAOs as software or traditional companies entirely. Rather than forcing a static box onto a dynamic system, we must engineer an adaptive exoskeleton. The sources actually compare this to Theogens and strand beasts. You know, those incredible, complex, kinetic art structures that literally walk and adapt to the wind on a beach. We need a legal exoskeleton that mimics that organic adaptability, one that fuses decentralized AI and smart contracts to protect the delicate organism inside. It needs to provide a safe harbor, shielding participants from liability while continuously responding to a changing legal and social environment.
This brings us to biomimetic DAO design, which literally means taking inspiration from nature. This means treating DAOs as multicellular entities capable of fluidly spanning multiple legal jurisdictions. In this model, smart contracts and AI agents act as specialized cells within the larger body, automating governance and enforcing compliance seamlessly. And instead of sporadic, apathetic token voting, the organism self-regulates through continuous feedback loops, treating failure as an ecological signal to adapt. Financially, it moves away from extractive industrial-era models. Instead, it utilizes regenerative tokenomics, emphasizing blue economy logic. In simple terms, this means systems are designed to reuse and cascade values circularly, much like an ocean ecosystem where absolutely nothing is wasted, rather than just extracting profit until the resource runs completely dry.
This quote perfectly summarizes our journey through this explainer today. We are not just dealing with new code, we're dealing with a totally new legal species. DAOs are fundamentally different animals. They require a dynamic, self-sustaining ecosystem designed specifically for post-industrial realities, rather than forcing them into a rusty diving bell built for the corporate structures of the 20th century. If we want these networks to thrive, the legal architecture absolutely must mirror the sophistication of the technology itself.
I want to leave you with this final thought to really spark your curiosity. As Web3 continues to grow into a vast, complex ocean of live cultures, the choice for builders and participants is becoming incredibly clear. When the regulatory and operational pressure mounts, and trust me, it absolutely will, are you going to be trapped in a rigid corporate straitjacket that snaps under the strain? Or will you have built an adaptive, intelligent exoskeleton capable of navigating the deep? Thank you so much for exploring this vital source material with me today, and I hope this fundamentally changes how you view the future of decentralized organizations.